welcome to Premier Fantasies, the football show. We are back again with another installment specifically around team tactics today. And again, Team Stretford Tinkerers, I hope I got it right this time, is with us to assist us with our tactics, which defenders we should choose, which midfielders we should choose, who we should look out for this season. So welcome again, Gabriel and Keegan.
Thank you again for having us.
So let's start off with you, Gabriel, or should we start with you, Keegan? Which one would like to tackle the issue of defenders?
Well, it's up to let's start with Keegan.
Cool, let's go for it.
Perfect. So I think firstly with defenders, I think Gabriel and I are each going to speak about a premium and a budget option in each position. So firstly, I'd like to speak about the elephants in the room, which seems to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think at 7.5 million, he's an absolute steal at that price. If you think of his attacking potential, his set pieces, direct free kicks, you're basically getting a winger for 7.5 million that's playing in one of the best teams in the league.
You're getting an all-in-one player.
Exactly. So you're getting all the clean sheets that Liverpool offer, as well as all of his attacking potential as well. So there is a reason why he is the most expensive defender in the game. And I also think that there is a little bit of uncertainty with Andy Robertson as well now, taking corners on the other side. So I think that is another important aspect to look at, because Robertson last season and the season before has also been a great asset, but didn't have set pieces. So I think Robertson at 0.5 cheaper than Alexander-Arnold now might also be a great asset to have this season.
And how about you, Gabriel? What are your thoughts on defenders?
So, like Keegan said, we had focused on trying to go for a budget option and then more expensive option. And as he brought up Andrew Robertson, he's actually he's my premium option as a defender. And you do get a lot of people who look and say, goodness me, these guys are very expensive for defenders specifically. But when your attacking output, as Keegan said, is as high as theirs, then it feels like a steal because they are practically playing midfielders. Andrew Robertson, specifically, he scored 181 points last season, which is extremely high. Never mind by defender standard, but by a fantasy Premier League standard. It's extremely high. And for reference, he scored more points than Harry Kane, who is a striker. So that's quite a lot. He made 12 assists, which is unbelievable for a player. Never mind for a defender, and he got the 13 clean sheets to his name as well. So priced at 7 million, I think he's a good option to go with, and he's a starter. He's a starter for Liverpool, so you can expect him to play almost week in, week out. That would be the premium option. And for the budget option, I've gone with a player whose price is 5 million. That's defender Ben Mee. Now, he's not playing the first game week for Burnley, but Burnley are very good defensively, as just like Andrew Robertson had 13 clean sheets, Ben Mee also had 13 clean sheets. So he's a good option to have as well. Also managed to score a goal and assist a couple of goals as well for Burnley. Scored 110 points, which for a defender is very high. And knowing that you can't get defenders like Trent and Andrew Robertson throughout your whole team, because you have to have balance. Having someone like Ben Mee for 5 million is a very good option to go with.
So from what I'm hearing from you, if you're looking for a defender, you're looking for two things: consistency, as well as the all-in-all factor, the ability to do more than one thing, more than just defend, basically.
Exactly. So I mean, that's where it comes to my budget defending option as well, which is Ben Davies from Tottenham. And also priced at 5 million. Under Mourinho, Spurs have been phenomenal defensively. As people know. I mean, before Mourinho
That's a debate for another day, hey?
Exactly. Well, before Mourinho got to Spurs, they only had one clean sheet the whole of last season before Mourinho arrived. So I think that's, and they got 8 clean sheets after Mourinho arrived. So I think that's really important to know. And now that he's had a full season with the team, or more than half a season with the team, and he's given them the time to see exactly who he wants, he's now got Matt Doherty as the right back,
Which is a
and
good buy.
he's got his
Very good, I'd say,
brilliant
yeah.
buy. And he's got his favourite centre-back, which seems to be Eric Dyer, back in the team. I think defensively, Spurs assets, especially because of their opening 8 fixtures, I think they've got 1 fixture above 3 on the FDR difficulty rating. So I really think he's a brilliant option because he also offers attacking potential, not as much as Matt Doherty, but you're saving $1 million. So I think he's really a great option as a budget way into that Spurs defense.
Correct. And in terms of midfielders, Gabriel, who are you looking at this season?
Right, so I've got three defenders. I've got 3 midfielders that we have actually decided to choose. So we've got a budget midfielder, we've got somebody just in the middle of them, and we've got a premium midfielder as well. So to start off with a premium midfielder, I've gone with Sadio Mane. Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. He scored 18 goals, assisted 10 times as well in the league. He is priced at 12 million. That's quite expensive, but the fact that he gets those extra points and for the clean sheets as well, the extra points, I think that's something to take note of moving forward, especially if you're going to score 18 goals and 10 assists. And he finished with 221 points. So that's very high. Another thing to note as well, I think we may have discussed it in the previous video, bonus points. So certainly if these guys play very well, they also get bonus points. So that's something that you want to factor. Check out who wins man of the match and whatnot, and then the ones who are likely to get bonus points. Those are the guys that you definitely want to have in your team. So that's the premium option. Then our middle option, I've gone with Christian Pulisic. I think he is unbelievable. He's only 21, 22 years old, somewhere around there. But of course, there's time for him to grow and get better. But what he showed, particularly after lockdown, was absolutely incredible. I believe he scored 9 goals and he had 8 assists the whole season. But after lockdown alone, he scored 4 goals and got 4 assists. And he finished with 137 points. And at 8.5 million, I think that's amazing. That's an amazing asset to have.
As an American, he's made the Premier League great again.
He really has. He really has. Of course, he was struggling to get in the side in the beginning, which is why I think he didn't score more points. But towards the end, you can see how important he is. And then finally, as my budget midfielder, I'm going with Bukayo Saka from Arsenal. He's priced at just 5.5 million. But he's starting to get a more starting role, or at least a more prominent role in the Arsenal side. And he managed to get 6 assists. And I believe those 6 assists started coming later on when he started really playing for the side. So we can see that Arteta favors him. So he will be playing a few times. And he scored 71 points, which I don't think is too bad for somebody who has not really been playing as often as I think he will be playing next season. And he looks to be a special player. And at 5.5, I think that's a very, very good option for a player.
Those are very interesting choices and very well thought out choices, particularly that the Saka, I actually never even thought of him. So that's very, very interesting. Keegan, what are your thoughts?
So I've done the same as Gabriel. I've got 3 options. So starting with my premium option, I've gone with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang for Arsenal. I think at 12 million, I think he's a phenomenal asset, mainly because he's now reclassified as a midfielder. So I've been working out his points, and if he was a midfielder last season, he would have had an additional 25 points overall. So he would have only been 3 points behind Mo Salah. So it just shows how good his season would have been if he was a midfielder. So I think it could be brilliant. And his opening 2 fixtures are really, really good. And he's a captaincy option for sure. And
always has been.
Exactly. And I think at 12 million, if he doesn't do well, you can literally move to anyone else in the game because there's no one else everyone else is either at his price or below. So if he doesn't go well, I think it's always good to have that flexibility where you can now change to literally anyone. So I've seen a lot of players that are going from Aubameyang to start off in game week 1 and 2, and then in game week 3, changing to a Man City asset. So either De Bruyne or Sterling or whoever plays. So it could even be
Right.
Phil Foden as a good budget option. So I think Aubameyang, I mean, he had the highest expected goal involvements for any player in the whole game last season.
That's
So
fantastic.
I think it's a really great asset to have. And now that he's a midfielder, he's just going to get additional points all over the place. As for my middle ground option, I've gone with Heung-min Son for Spurs.
Awesome player.
Exactly.
Don't fault you there.
And I think it's so difficult to look past him at the moment, especially, I mean, it's the same with Ben Davies. He's got such good opening fixtures. Harry Kane did play last night, so Son might lose that upfront role. But I think as a midfield option, as a middle ground option, it also gives you that flexibility to move around with. So if you've got money in the bank that you've banked, then you can go either up to a Bruno Fernandes or a Rashford when when they start playing, or you can go down to Dele Alli, who is also, he's completely going to reignite that Spurs side, I believe, because Spurs with Dele Alli and Spurs without Dele Alli, I think, are two completely different sides. So I think they really need someone like that in the midfield to really push them forward and help them. And I think he's a massive goal threat as well. So he's got a massive assist potential. So he had the highest assists for any player in Spurs last season. And with when Harry Kane's on form and Son's firstly assisting Harry Kane and getting goals himself, I think it could be a brilliant asset at 9 million. Then lastly, as my budget midfielder, I've gone with Saint-Maximin from Newcastle. And at 5.5 million, I think he's only starting his Premier League stint. I think we saw a lot of glimpses of him last season where he had a lot of flair, and I think Newcastle needed that. I mean, they've got Richie, and they've just signed a new attacker now as well. So I think Alan Saint-Maximin is a great asset to have at 5.5, and also is a great budget enabler as well. So at 5.5, if you've got money in the bank, you can move up to Phil Foden, who's only 1 million more than him. So if Foden plays, I think it could be a great also just enabler to see where you can go with that money. His opening 2 fixtures are great, and he's just basically a placeholder for now. And he only faces 2 teams in the entire league for the first 15 game weeks that have a fixture difficulty rating of above 3. So I think as a Newcastle asset, he could be a brilliant option.
Should we be looking out for any midfielders, possibly from the teams that have just come out of the relegation zone, that have moved in, like your Leeds United?
I think there's a lot of players that have never played in the Premier League before, and the newly promoted teams generally get a large lump sum of cash that now they're spending wherever they can spend it. So I think it's difficult to try and plan ahead for newly promoted teams purely because you don't know what their starting lineup is going to be. So I think there's very few players that are going to be consistent starters at the beginning of the season because Bielsa is still figuring out his team. I know he's got a lot of players that he really likes and that would always start for him. But there's a lot of players, especially from Fulham and from West Brom, like Phillips Pereira at West Brom could be a brilliant asset because he was great for them last season. But how he's going to take to the Premier League is a completely different ball game.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the history, Norwich in last season, at the beginning, we saw like Pukki do amazing things, and then as the season went on and it got more difficult, it became more difficult for him as a player as well as the entire team. So I think those are things that are definitely important to look out for. Let's go into our strikers, into our forwards. Keegan.
Perfect. I'll start. So I've got one premium forward and a budget. So my premium forward I've gone with is Timo Werner for Chelsea. And I very rarely choose a player that's never played in the Premier League before.
That's an interesting choice.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that I think are looking at Werner purely because of, I mean, he had 28 goals and 8 assists last season just in the Bundesliga alone. So I think because the Bundesliga is such a similar league to the Premier League in terms of its physicality, he's not coming from a very technical league where it's a lot of skill like the La Liga or the Serie A or Ligue 1. So I think as as an attacking forward for, I mean, a completely rejuvenated Chelsea team. I mean, if you think he's got Kai Havertz, Ziyech, Mount, Pulisic all around him that are all going to be feeding him, and he's getting behind all these defenders, I think it's very difficult to look beyond him at this point, especially at his price. I mean, he's cheaper than Vardy, he's cheaper than Kane, he's cheaper than Gabriel Jesus. So I think with his potential, I think at 9.5 million, I think he's really going to be a great asset. And I think it's difficult to look past Chelsea's opening fixtures as well. Yes, they start off with a very tough fixture, but moving forward, they've got a brilliant run of fixtures, and I think Werner will really pull his weight in that team.
Do you agree with that, Gabriel?
I 100% agree. I think also just watching the way he plays, I feel like the reason why Lampard wanted to get him specifically is because he'd fit right into the system that Frank Lampard wants to play. And he did score as well. The very first game he played for Chelsea, he scored like 4 minutes in, and it was a preseason game, just trying to get used to it. He's been training for a very long time with the squad. So you can imagine that he will have built some kind of partnership or some kind of chemistry with some of his teammates. I don't expect players like Kai Havertz to start off from the get-go, just based on how Lampard went into it last season. He started focusing on the players that he had known for a long time and players that hadn't necessarily come in, which is another reason why he was easing Christian Pulisic into the side, despite what I believe that Christian Pulisic is Chelsea's perhaps best attacking player or best attacking option as a player, not just FPL asset. So I think that he's going to focus on the guys that he knows and the guys that he's been training with, and he's going to ease in everyone else. And I think I think he's ready. I think he's ready to get off flying.
I think that sounds like a very important thing when you're picking your strikers, to look at who's going to feed into them and whether or not they've gelled with the team. I think that's going to be very important, because when you're a striker, you need to have the ability to predict the balls that are coming towards you. In the same way as a midfielder, you need to have the ability to predict where the striker is going to stand or where he could possibly be to receive the ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and your premium choices on your strikers? Sorry.
So I've gone with Alexander Mitrovic for Fulham at 6 mil. And I know I said that I wouldn't really choose a player from another team for the midfielders from a promoted team. But I've chosen Mitrovic purely because of he's played in the Prem before. He's got a lot of players around him that are really feed the ball straight to him. He's the talisman in that team. I mean, they really look to him for goals, and you could see it last season when he was injured in the Championship. I mean, they really missed having him in that side. So I think the fact that he's played in the Prem before, he's only 6 million, and around that budget, there's not many players that I would choose ahead of him. I mean, there's players like Shea Adams for Southampton who could be another good option, but very few options around that price range. So I think the fact that he's played in the Prem before, and he's such a physical player, he doesn't get bullied off the ball. He plays in behind. So I think Mitrovic is a great asset, especially with Fulham's opening fixtures as well.
Yeah.
And you, Gabriel?
Yeah, I really like that Mitrovic option. I think he is a proven goal scorer, and I mean, he scored about 26 league goals in the Championship last season, and he has played in the Premier League, so he does know what to expect and how difficult it is. So I had a difficulty with I'm going to start with a budget option. I had a bit of difficulties with regards to the choices, and it boiled down to two. I had Jordan Ayew, and I also but my option itself is Neil Maupay of Brighton. I think that he had a decent season. Yes, he had quite a decent season. Scored 10 goals, had 3 assists. He's priced at just 6.5 million, and he scored 131 points. Now, you wouldn't think that, or the reality of Fantasy Premier League is you need to look at budget players, and you're going to have to look at the teams that are considered smaller, put in quotes, because there's no small team in the Premier League, but that's where you're going to have to look, and you need to look for those who are going to get you the numbers, because at the end of the day, Fantasy Premier League is about the numbers, and he gets some decent numbers, particularly for his price. So that's why I've gone for Neil Maupay, and for my premium option, I've gone for Harry Kane. I believe in world football, there is no striker that is as good as Harry Kane when he's at his best, perhaps except for Robert Lewandowski. Harry Kane is an unbelievable striker, and he's been very consistent every season, despite even having some little injuries that he'll have. And that's the only thing that messes with his game. But I also believe he's one of those players who's even going to surpass Alan Shearer's goal scoring record if he's to stay in the Premier League for his entire season. He scored 18 goals last season, which is low by his standards, which speaks to how much of an asset he is. He scored 158 points, and he's priced at 10.5 million. Also lower price than some other more expensive options. And I believe Aguero's more expensive than him. I'm not sure if there's anyone else who's more expensive than him. But with regards to just his professionalism as well on the field, and it seems like him and Mourinho are starting to get a good understanding, and he's going to be the one that they look to, him as well as Son, like Keegan mentioned, to get those goals. So Harry Kane is my option, and specifically because the Premier League isn't starting in August, so there's no Harry Kane curse of not scoring in August. And I think I actually also looked to Harry Kane because last season he started off scoring. First game of the season he scored. The last game of the season he scored. The first game after lockdown he scored. So even when there is an extended break, Harry Kane can just get back where he left off. So he's definitely the premium option that I think that people should be looking at.
Yeah, he's definitely a striker that has very good instincts. I mean, he always seems to be at the right place at the right time to receive those balls. So he's really good like that. What I wanted to ask, and this is a spanner in the works because we weren't actually going to discuss it, but I'm throwing it in there. Are there any players that you would actually stay away from because they're either reckless or you just find that they're not consistent enough?
Me personally, yes. Gabriel Jesus is one of them for Man City because when Aguero's back, he's losing that spot. Another player I wouldn't pick is Bernardo Silva, another Man City option, because I think Phil Foden's coming into the team. They've just signed Ferran Torres, and Mahrez is also playing his way around back into the team as well. So I think there's so much rotation risk there. I think it's any players that you should avoid is players that have a high rotation risk. So players like Mason Greenwood for Manchester United, he could be a brilliant asset. But if we sign a winger and now Greenwood's starting spot is now lost, then I think there's a lot of things that are still uncertain for the season. But I think definitely look at players that are rotation risks to avoid.
Yeah, that is the problem with players from Man City. They've got such a strong team, and even their substitutes are so strong. You never know what Guardiola is going to do in terms of who he'll start, who he'll play, who he won't play.
That's true.
And you, Gabriel, any high-risk players that you will not go
for? So my first thought with things like that are players who are... So I look mostly at defenders, players who are reckless, and players who are likely to get red cards. So someone like Serge Aurier.
I was thinking exactly of Serge Aurier.
I can't. I'll stay away, and I mean, it helps that, thinking about the fact that Matt Doherty is going to be there, I believe he's there to start. So Serge Aurier's game time might be limited as well. And then perhaps a player like Eric Bailly of Man United, very reckless. He is you never know what's going to happen with him. And also players who, have a history of getting injured very often. So Eric Bailly also fits the bill, gets injured often. He's a bit of a reckless player, so you don't know if he's going to give you a red card on any given day. So perhaps players like those are the ones that I say, all right, have a look. And then if you do think that there's a risk of points, you're not going to get the points you need, or you might get points deducted, then perhaps they're not the players to go for. And lastly, of course, this is a bit more like stats wise that you have to look into. Check out some teams that concede penalties as well. Goalkeeper, I know goalkeeper saves and whatnot, but teams that concede penalties, was reading up on statistics, teams that lose match or concede penalties first as the first goal, they tend to concede more goals throughout the match as well. Like it rattles them. So so those are some of the things to look at.
Team like that.
Yeah. Spurs gets rattled.
That is the truth. I'm a diehard fan, but I know the truth.
And I think also, just to add to that as well, I mean, also look at forwards that are, or players that are overpriced for what they offer. Yeah. So players like Roberto Firmino, I think, is a prime example. At 9.5 million as a forward, you would say a forward for Liverpool, get him in my team. I mean, it can't go wrong. But it just shows last season, Firmino doesn't have that killer instinct anymore. He would rather pass to Salah or pass to Mane than to take the shot on. So I think definitely players that are overpriced for what they offer in that team as well.
Yeah.
Lastly, let's go into our captains. Captain choices, guys.
Okay, so I'll take this one. My captain choice, I'm thinking of, it could change. I mean, we are the tinkerers by any stretch of imagination. But at the moment, I'm looking at Mo Salah for Liverpool.
Really?
Yes. I think purely because he's got brilliant home form. They're playing Leeds at home, and Leeds could be without Ben White, which I think was holding that Leeds defense together like glue last season.
Yeah.
So I think if Leeds don't manage to sign Ben White and he does go to Brighton, I think that could be a massive loss for them, and I think Liverpool will run riot. And I think especially what happened at the end of last season with them coming off a bit of form, losing the FA Cup, or moving into the FA Cup, losing a lot of games right at the end of the season. I think they really need to pick up form hot, because even in the preseason, they haven't looked great. So I think they really need to start the season strong in order to be, the same Liverpool team that everyone expects him to be.
Yeah.
So.
But what if Mo Salah's strength is in his hair, like Samson, and now he's lost all his form because the hair's gone?
A lot of people have been saying that. I'm hoping that it makes him a bit more aerodynamic and he's a bit quicker. But I agree. I mean, since he's cut his hair, it seems like it's a different Egyptian. So it could go either way. But I think also, I mean, looking at his stats post-restart, he was the second highest player for expected goal involvement. He had the highest big chances after the restart. And he played less games because of all the rotation that Liverpool had at the end of the season. So I think if you're looking at that and just purely on stats, I think Salah is a phenomenal option. I mean, he's had the most shots on target last season. He's got assist potential. So I think he's got a lot of options of scoring points. So I think Salah for me would be a very good captaincy option, also because he's playing at Anfield.
And for you, Gabriel, who is your captain?
My captaincy option, I've gone with Harry Kane. So they are playing at home as well, the first fixture. And as I said as well, Harry Kane starts off, or based on last season, he started off well every time there was some form of restart, and he ended off the season well as well. And he is that player that you're going to look to. They are playing Everton, who have strengthened in midfield, but their defense isn't as strong as perhaps what I'd expect Tottenham Hotspur's defense to be. And you can expect Harry Kane to try and take advantage of that. I think that against any defender, he's going to give them trouble. Even against Virgil van Dijk, he'll give them trouble. So, I expect Harry Kane to start off strong, and I expect him to or I expect him to actually put those goals away, and the faith that people who captain him have, I don't think it's going to be wasted.
Any other captains that you guys think might surprise us this season?
Surprising, I wouldn't say surprising, but Aubameyang's a definite captain choice as well. Phenomenal player, phenomenal goal scorer, Arsenal's talisman, and also starts off strong. He scored the first game of last season as well. He finished off the season strong as well. I believe he scored 2 goals at the end of the season. So he's definitely an option. He was just 1 goal away from being top goal scorer. So Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is definitely a player to watch as well for captaincy.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that none of you mentioned Kevin De Bruyne.
I think it's mainly just purely for the opening game week, because City don't have a game. I think from game week 2 onwards, I think De Bruyne or Sterling is a phenomenal captaincy shout. But I think purely looking at the opening fixtures, Chelsea assets look great. So you could look at Werner as well. I think it could be a surprising captain if you choose him, but it could be a good differential as a captain. Arsenal have a great fixture as well. Like Gabriel was saying, Spurs with Kane, Liverpool. I mean, there's a lot of good options there. So I think the Man City and United options will start becoming options, especially United from game week 2. I think Man City mainly more from game week 3, purely because I think they play Leicester in game week 2. So it could be a trickier fixture purely based on paper. But I mean, Leicester's defense post-lockdown was atrocious. So I think City could also run riot there.
Well, thank you very, very much, guys, for those tips. I'm so looking forward to seeing how things play out. I'm definitely glad that this is recorded and we can go back to it, so I can go back to you guys and say, but like, really? I mean, really? Did you study? But for the evening, that's all we have for you today, guys. To Gabriel, to Keegan, thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you for those tips, and I look forward to another week on Premier Fantasies, the football show. From myself, Hlohlo, have a wonderful evening.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.